And we're back. Thank you, Bud, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pocket.
The first thing I've got to ask is I didn't want to start the interview with mispronouncing your last name.
Yeah, I'd love to give it a go. I'm always interested. What do you think?
Let's see what I was gonna go with Hennekes.
Hennekes, yeah.
Hennekes.
That's close enough. It's pretty solid, Bud, like the Bud Light, Hennekes, like Heineken,
Okay, I get it. I mean, would you like to take a spin at my last name? I mean,
I think I'm all right.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's that one. You're not gonna people always mistake it. So yeah, thank you for being one of the first people to interview with me. I wanted to do this series to kind of give people a glimpse into absolutely random people's lives. Like literally, I put out a post on Reddit to see the most random people I can get. And yeah, I memean, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Like, do you have, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Bud Hennekes. I'm 24 years old. I was born in, I'm just kidding. So basically who I am, I love telling stories. I'm a digital marketer. So what I like to do is tell stories. I like connecting with people, and I'm a big social media guy. So I'm trying to build that into my career right now. But basically, my whole premise is like, I'm definitely all about like living to your best potential, that kind of stuff. But I really love telling stories, whether that's from a brand perspective or an individual, and just creating a life that you really enjoy and you can really get behind.
Right on. And you started, you started with the, I was born in wherever. I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a pretty unique history in that sense. So I was actually born in California.
Okay.
I'm adopted, which is kind of a unique twist as well.
Okay.
I'm half Filipino and half American/European.
Okay.
So I was born in California. I was adopted. I lived in Louisiana, Texas, and then my dad worked for a few oil companies. So when I was maybe 7, 8, I moved to the Netherlands for 3 years, which was really my first exposure to kind of international travel. Unfortunately, I was a little bit on the younger side, so I don't remember every single one of those memories, but I do remember that the Dutch clogs, they're these wooden shoes that you could wear around the house and all that good stuff.
So when did you were all over the place there? Like when did you move out of LA? Like,
yeah, so I was actually born in San Ramon, which is, I believe, near San Francisco, so northern California.
Sorry, I'm the one who lived in LA, so I was like, California, there's only one place.
Yeah, no worries. So my birth mom and birth dad live in the northern California area.
Okay.
And so my parents at the time, my birth parents lived in California, and then my parents lived in Louisiana. So upon being born, I then moved to Louisiana for a few years.
Okay.
And we were actually in a flood when I was really young. I remember water coming in the house and things like that. So there's a massive tropical storm dilemma, that kind of stuff.
In Louisiana?
In Louisiana. So our house flooded, and this is one of the memories. I remember my neighbors, my mom and dad were out and about, and my neighbors actually had to come over and get the babysitter and I and take us to higher ground because it was coming in pretty crazy. And I remember my neighbors like carrying me, a little baby, across to their house. So I lived in Louisiana. Then my dad switched his job a little bit. Then we moved to Clear Lake, Texas. And then we ended up moving to the Netherlands, where I started essentially grade school, so to speak. So I think I was there from kindergarten to second grade. And again, I was a little bit young, so I don't remember everything, unfortunately. I would love to go back with like kind of fresher perspective, fresher eyes. But upon living in the Netherlands for 3 years, we actually moved back to Texas, where I spent the bulk of my childhood, say third grade up until sophomore year, so the second year of high school, where I lived a pretty average life, ran cross country, that kind of stuff.
Right on. I mean, I guess the question I'd have there is like, what's it like going from the U.S. to the Netherlands and back to the U.S.?
Yeah, again, so the Netherlands was a little bit younger, so I can't really conceptualize it that much. I will say, however, in my journey after sophomore year, my dad was transferred to Shanghai, China. So that was where I was a little bit older, 15, 16 years old. That was a little bit of a culture shock and more of an adjustment.
Yeah, no.
And I'd love to talk about.
Yeah, no, the culture shock thing is what I want to dwell on. I mean, what do you think was, what was it like being someone who's more, I guess mainly American at this point? I mean, Netherlands, come on, mainly American at this point, down in China.
Yeah, so I remember like I was kind of itching to go somewhere else. I wasn't really enjoying Texas all that much at that point, but I had a really close network of friends. I was running that kind of consumed my life. And my dad just came home one day and was like, "Hey, bud, we're moving to China."
Oh
And I was like,
God.
"China? Like, do they have internet over there? Like, do they
Yeah.
have houses?" Like, I was very like I was 15, 16, but I was definitely like very sheltered in terms of my worldview,
Sure.
despite having lived in the Netherlands when I was younger.
Right. Exactly.
Um,
But
but I was also looking forward to it. And at that point, I was kind of getting into the world of personal development, improving myself. And
okay.
so instead of looking at it as like, oh man, I'm going to lose all my friends, I looked at it as like an opportunity to reinvent myself. And it actually panned out very well for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. No, I was gonna say like like a very narrow world view, but for someone who's been, in more places by 16 than I mean, well, at least by 16 than I've been. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I went over there actually. It was like an international school. So I was definitely, there's some influence. It was a Christian international school. So it was very small compared to my 2000 plus class in high school in Texas, which is a very large. But really, I just looked at it as a period to reinvent myself. And I kind of was like, I can be anyone who I want. And it's kind of fun.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's the only times that I've been able to reinvent myself. Like, yeah, I went to Israel for a couple years, for a year actually, and then I went to New York for a couple years. And those were the times when you go somewhere and no one, that is the exact time where you get the opportunity to reinvent yourself. So
Yeah, I have a funny story. So I was actually trying to connect with people before I went over there. I was right around the Facebook kind of MySpace time.
sure.
So I started connecting with a few people, and I ended up meeting up a few people within days of being there. I made some friends, and I remember like Shanghai's, yeah, it's pretty
No,
wild.
I'm saying like that is pretty wild. That's ambitious for someone at 16.
Yeah, no, and so it was funny though because I didn't speak the language. Obviously, I was a little tepid about like how am I going to get around. So I ended up going to a friend's of mine house. His name was Marco. He was my best friend.
Yeah.
And we met up, and he's like, "Oh, hey, bud, like, do you need help getting home?" I was like, "How do I get home?" He's like, "Oh, just take a taxi. Like, you have a little card of where you live, and then the taxi driver takes you there."
Really?
So it turned out my cell phone was dying, and my taxi driver couldn't read. So we were driving for maybe 45 minutes and it should take like 5.
Sure.
And I was getting a little nervous, like never been in China before. This is like within a week of being there. And he doesn't know where we're going. I'm like, we're driving and I see cows and like farms to the side of the road. I'm getting a little scared because my phone's dead. I don't speak the language. I have no way to communicate to my mom. I think I was like, "Hey mom, I'm lost." And my phone died or something like that. So as you can imagine, an American family, my parents were a little concerned, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what was the icing on the cake, however, is we're going right, and then we hit a pile of rocks, and our car like flips.
Seriously?
So like I'm like stuck in the car, and the cab driver's like revving his engine, trying to get out of these rocks, and I have a little bit of whiplash from hitting these rocks just in the middle of the street.
Wait, the car. I mean, how much?
Yeah, I mean not like upside down, but it definitely like kind of turned sideways,
Right.
So I was like, oh man, like what is gonna go? So I eventually he starts screaming at me, like, "Pay me." I was like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
So I get out of the car and fortunately I was able to find another cab who could happen to read the card I had, and I was able to make it home safely. But that was within the first 2-3 weeks of living in China.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got a couple questions on that. Like the card itself. I mean, is it just your address or is it some other type of card?
So generally the way it works over there is an international family is called an expat. So from all over. And there's like maybe a dozen or so popular compounds that are very popular with the expat community.
Interesting.
And so it's like a gated community, so to speak. So they have cards where you can give it to your taxi driver or anyone like that, just to make it easier on everyone. So it's actually a very nice system, unless they don't understand the card or I don't know where it is.
Sure. So it's like an information card.
Yeah, so everyone carries it around until you get familiar with it.
Yeah, I was just
and then
curious
you can,
if it had like some type of code on it or something, or if it was like,
yeah, it's pretty standard. It just shows the address and the name of the compound, and more often than not, it gets you home. So like you can come over and show anyone the card, and virtually all the time they'll get you there.
That's awesome. So yeah, so once again, like you're in China, right? And yeah, I guess the two questions would be like, one, did you have any trouble with the language barrier there? And two, like, just because you're still on that story, did he bring you any bit closer to your house, or was it just completely?
I think we were like pretty close, but I don't know what happened. I ended up just getting out, and I didn't end up paying him, of course. And I think we understood that that was a fair
Yeah,
trade
yeah, he
because
just took you.
he didn't get. I don't think he meant like ill will, but like I think he was a little confused or lost. But
Yeah,
back to your first question, I definitely I lived in Shanghai, and so that was pretty Americanized, or there's a lot of people who speak English enough to where it's not that difficult to get around. Of course, everyone speaks Chinese, but in the international community I never really had a huge issue with the dialogue. I play charades a lot in the taxi cabs and that kind of stuff. But the Chinese people, at least in my experience, are very friendly in terms of, hey, this guy's trying to learn English. And so if you just showed a little bit of effort, it worked out very well. I mean, I would tell them, hey, I'm from Houston. And then they'd go, oh, you know Yao Ming, like crazy, cool. And so I told them like Yao Ming's my best friend, that kind of stuff.
Of course.
But over time, I did take Chinese in my international school. Unfortunately, I never took the language learning that seriously. I was too busy going to clubs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that is one regret I have. But I did get to the point where I was semi conversational in my language, and I was able to navigate around the country.
Far better than me. I mean, when I went to Israel for a year, and I was in in the middle of the all that culture, but I've had like Hebrew education for far too long, and it just hasn't stuck. So
you have to make a conscious effort, and I think anyone will tell you this that has lived abroad is like just living abroad isn't enough to like magically download the language.
But that I do. Yeah, at that point. Yeah.
You can live in the country for 10 years. And like my mom, like bless her heart, I'm not speaking poorly of her, but she just didn't really put a huge effort into learning the language. And consequently she didn't. And myself, I didn't really learn the language all that much. I mean, my little brother and sister, on the other hand, really kind of embraced it. And my sister, she's 13 right now, but she was at the point where she can kind of have conversations at will. And that was really a good learning experience for her.
That's impressive. Yeah. Yeah. I like to think with myself that I just frankly can't learn any language. It's just
it's a very, very, very popular limiting belief, but I usually try to call BS on it, especially for myself.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I guess we can move on to another question. This was one that I've really wanted to ask people. How would your best friend describe you?
My best friend. Let's see. My best friend would probably describe me as fairly goofy. A little bit childish and just my humor and just kind of that thing, but also very serious when I have a goal and I want to accomplish it. So a little bit of mix of between serious and kind of just lighthearted fun, or a shit disturber, as many people like to call me. A shit disturber. I like to stir things up.
Oh yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like my best friend would also, tell me a similar thing. Like, so what do you do when you're bored?
What do I do when I'm bored? Usually just surf Twitter, to be honest. I'm a big Twitter addict. I like reading these days. I've also been on a big gym kick lately. My health is kind of slacking, so I'll usually go out to the gym, kind of stuff.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. But I'm always on Twitter connecting with people. I think like a lot of people just view social media as a waste of time, like just pushing their own content, website, blog, whatever. But for me, like I love just connecting with people. I love learning about what drives people, what makes you tick. And I think we met through Gabby, but like just building those connections like really helped me enjoy life more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that type of person as well when it comes to like that. I think that's why we were connected, because of that.
Yeah, I think Gabby, but it was just like it was just serendipitous. Like the more you show up in these situations, the more likely you are to connect with someone on a deeper level. And ultimately, that's what I value over everything is deep relationships and just making stuff happen.
Yeah, and to go back to what you said. You said this somewhere in there. Do you have any heroes?
Heroes. I wouldn't really call them heroes. I don't really like putting people on pedestals so much.
Okay.
I will say like I view them more as a mentor, because I think viewing people as mentors doesn't necessarily put you up as on a pedestal. I think a lot of people, including myself, they'll think like, oh, this girl is too big for me. Like I can't even talk to them, or I can't reach out to them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you kind of view it under a lens of a mentorship role, it's just the power is transferring. It's not that he or she's better than you. It's you're just not there yet, or it's just going to transfer back and forth.
That's interesting. I mean, like to me, I feel like the hero thing is, once putting them on a pedestal in a different way, like they're like similar to what you said in the sense of, they're sort of better than you, but it's more they're flawed in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big thing. I think a lot of people, especially with and I'll answer your question here and who my heroes are, but I think with a lot of outreach, especially I see in the podcast blogging world, is like people are so afraid of like even talking to people because they think they're just so much better than them. And like, yeah, like success does come with its own merits, and like there is some power structure there, but like I think it's silly to just like give up and say like, I can never talk to this person. I'm not good enough, that kind of stuff.
That's not it. Like with me, the one person I would love to meet, like it's literally the only thing I have on my bucket list is to meet Steve Wozniak, because he is. But once again, like when I say like, people are like flawed in that way, instead my approach to it is I'll have like a hero for a specific aspect. Like absolutely.
Yeah. So we can talk a little bit about my influences. Obviously the cliche, my parents are, I look up to both my mom and dad quite a bit. Even my birth parents, I respect a lot for making that tough decision to put me up for adoption.
Sure.
But in terms of online influences, I'm a big fan of Ramit Sethi. He's really big in psychology, networking, finance, that kind of stuff. Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income is really inspiring to me because he builds an online business in a very reputable and authentic way. Leo Balbota of Zen Habits. There's just a lot of people online who I'm super inspired by.
Yeah, and these are mostly business people.
Business people, online bloggers, and lifestyle too. I mean, John Lee Dumas and Eric, I believe, they run a business called Entrepreneur on Fire.
Okay.
And so they're also big influences of mine as well.
That's awesome. So, it's funny. I spent a bunch of time on like a couple questions, which is fine. I just want to get into, I guess, your jobs and hobbies, because I haven't gone into that yet.
Absolutely. So hobbies, writing, learning about psychology, copywriting, marketing, social media, kind of right off the bat. Job-wise, I'm kind of in transition right now. I'm looking to get back involved in the startup world. But I do keep up with the podcast and blog in the meantime of my own, A Boundless World. But I've done some community management, worked at a variety of different tech startups, also lived in Chile for an entrepreneurship program, that kind of stuff. So I've had a wide array of experiences so far at 24.
You're all over the place. Are there any hobbies that aren't, I guess, business related that you have?
Yeah. I mean, meditation, I don't think is business related, but I enjoy that. I enjoy reading, not necessarily like business books or whatever. I'm a big fan of fiction. I like nonfiction as well, not necessarily just business books, but more like psychology. So I wouldn't even relate that to business. It's more just of a life tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like documentaries as well too.
That's cool. Yeah. So, what did you do you mentioned another country. Like you're really all over
so Chile was my kind of most recent adventure. So I was in Chile for about a year. Actually ended up meeting my current girlfriend there, which is phenomenal as well.
Awesome. Did she come with you or?
She's currently in Chile. She did come to the US for 3 months, which was a lot of fun though.
That's cool.
But in Chile, I was a part of this program called Exosphere, which is an entrepreneurship boot camp, so to speak, where people from all over the world gather to work on their ideas, learn about entrepreneurship, that kind of stuff. And so going in the theme of like living all abroad, that kind of stuff, I met people from Brazil, Europe, all this kind of stuff. And that's just something that really invigorates me in terms of meeting people, new cultures, new ideas. And so I was part of 2 programs, first a 2-month program and then a 3-month program, both as staff and a participant of just helping people figure out their business ideas, helping them learn more about entrepreneurship, things, that kind of stuff.
Ignore the light falling in the background.
It happens.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, awesome. About community management. Is there something that people don't take into account when they think of community management that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think community management is super broad. Some view it as like customer service. Some people view it as like a content creator. But for me, I even call the community management position, in my view, like a community builder. So anything that you do to enhance the current community, whether on behalf of a brand or your own personal following, I think that's where it is. It's a community builder. So yes, that might be answering support tickets at 2 a.m. in the morning, but it's also creating content, creating value to add to your community, to really allow them to to understand what your brand's about and how you want to bring value into their lives. And so I think community management is severely, severely underrated. It's not just answering emails and saying, yes, thank you. It's really diving deep into the end customer's goal and helping them get there, because you're selling kind of an ideal world to them and making sure that they're as close to that ideal world as possible.
Right. And I like that approach within community management from, once again, from my experience in community management, where you really inherently caring about the person. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. You're really caring about, the end user of whatever product it is. You actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's reading outside the lines too. Like, I think a lot of people in the traditional way marketing and businesses have run in past, it's like, if yes, if like they read off a checklist, like if this happens, check. If this doesn't happen, no. Like, and I think like a good community manager / community builder is going to be responsive on behalf of the situation at hand. And like,
right.
Sometimes that means going above and beyond, dabbling outside the lines. Maybe, for example, I just talked to a guy today who they had a product they wanted to sell. And this mom contacted him and was like, hey, is this product going to be ready by Christmas? And they're like, unfortunately, with manufacturing, that's not going to work. So then they went above and beyond, and they're like, and the mom was like, oh yeah, the kid is very concerned. Like, this is his number one item.
Sure.
And aside from the PlayStation. And so the company went out and bought him a few PlayStation games.
No way.
To say like, hey, sorry, like you'll get your product, but we want to help you with your PlayStation. And like, he's a lifelong customer forever now.
Right,
you know
right.
I mean?
No, that's my favorite part of the people, at least the people in my life who do social media or who do community management. They actually, take that type of stuff. They, it's not about responding to the person in this perfect way. It's about, with me, breaking into a dialogue and then figuring out how they can make their day better.
Yeah. I mean, like noticing, like, so you're communicating with someone and you check out their Twitter profile to get some information and you see they're a dog lover, like sending them a few dog treats. Like, it's simple things like that go like, hey, yes, you're giving me money. We have a relationship. It's a business, but like, we're humans. We want to make this transaction as human and as most valuable as possible. And I think it's just super important to really listen to what they're asking for, listen to what's going on in their life. But the problem is it takes work. It takes some effort, and not everyone's willing to put in that time and place.
Yeah. And you send someone who's a dog lover dog treats and they go nuts.
Absolutely. And it's not like bribery necessarily. Like, I think a lot of people too, it's not about just surprising and delighting every customer, like making sure everything. It's also like how you interact in tough times. Maybe you have an outage, like framing it in like, hey, like going above and beyond. Like, I read a study once, I can't remember what book, but it really fascinated me. They said at a hotel, if you go and have a really good experience at a hotel, you're going to have a certain happiness level, right? And they measured it. It's pretty high. Like, if it's the quality as high as possible. But they said, if you go to a hotel and your AC isn't working and then someone comes and fixes it right away, that person is actually going to be happier in the long run than the customer who just enjoyed his experience. So the way I frame community building is just looking at those opportunities to really enhance your message, your brand, your values, and go above and beyond, as cliche as that sounds.
No, that's pretty interesting. I just was noting it down because that's something that I didn't take into account. That's very interesting there because, I don't know if I should rephrase it there, but it's just great that, if you make things better for people, if things are the status quo as well as if things are great for people, that's one thing. But if things are okay and then you make them great, then
obviously I think you should aim for great all the time, but like obviously things are going to slip up. And again, it goes both ways. Like, you fix the AC right away and it goes up, but if you ignore it or they're hot for the rest of the night, then it goes all the way down.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, it's exponential. Like, the great was only great, but it's really great if you go in and you fix.
Because they're going to remember you, and they're going to tell their family and friends. And again, this comes back to the idea of storytelling.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you just give me a moment here, this thing is driving me nuts.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know what's going on here. Awesome. Yeah. It's just a button. Okay. So let's see. Is there anything I was going to say, is there anything you want to talk about? But I do want to ask a question related to jobs.
Of course.
Yeah. If you could do any job in the world, if you could have any job in the world, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think jobs are changing so quickly. It'd be a little bit of a hybrid based on my skills. I don't think I have like one specific dream job. I definitely would love a job that I'm creating something I find valuable and helping people. So I'd kind of lean towards building courses that help people, building products that help people get better jobs, improve their relationships, that kind of stuff, and build that to scale. And also I'm really big on creating products that people love and enjoy. So I know that's a little bit of a cop out, but
No,
based on my skills,
it's not. You know, when you don't have a precise answer, it's the exact. You know.
Yeah, I mean, based on my talents, it would involve something around, or my strengths and interests: copywriting,
Sure.
psychology, public speaking,
Sure.
and connecting with the consumer on a one-on-one basis. I think that would be like a very happy place for me.
Let me see here, because there's so many. You know, I just want to ask about your taste in music. I'm trying to make all these random questions kind of build a character, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't really know any music by name, really. I just kind of
Really?
hop on like 8 Tracks or Pandora
Really?
and kind of just listen to themes. I'm big onto electronic, explosions in the sky.
Oh,
I like remix, that kind of stuff. So like I'll type in 8 Tracks, which has different themes, and just kind of go with that.
sure.
But naming off the top, so explosions in the sky. I like Lil Wayne.
Okay, that's cool.
Radiohead.
Yeah. No, no.
But I don't have like specific, and I usually I like the top hits generally sometimes. So I'll just play those.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I am like incredibly particular with my music.
Yeah.
Like, I have just, you know, Spotify playlists that go from like here to God knows where. Just you know, name album after album after album. Do you have any favorite quote?
My favorite quote of all time. I don't know there's a story and I don't want to botch it, but the quote is essentially, and it's going to be my next tattoo.
Cool.
It's going to be called, it's this too shall pass.
Okay.
And so basically the premise, I think there's an old story about a king who like said, "Hey, bring me back all the wisdom in the world." And so 3 people traveled out and one came back with like a huge book. The next one came back and then the king's like, "That's too much. I can't read." So he brought back a smaller book. And then the third one comes back with just on a scribe, like, "This too shall pass." And so I think that really can break down a lot of things for me. Is I've suffered from like depression. I've suffered from super highs and lows.
Yeah.
But for me, "This too shall pass" applies to both the good and bad times. It's one of my favorite quotes, but a lot of people think it's like depressing, where it definitely has a depression, like a down aspect. Like if you're struggling with something or you lose someone, this too shall pass. Yeah. But for me, it's also a good reminder of like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. This too shall pass. Let's enjoy it to the fullest.
That's cool. Yeah. And I mean, you can't go through life without hitting, you know, whatever walls. And if you somehow accomplish not hitting walls, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, you know. Yeah. And it can apply to literally every situation. Like you're mad at your sibling, this too shall pass. Like you're really enjoying this like time with your wife, like this too shall pass. Like It shouldn't be taken for granted. Like I just like that philosophy. So that's probably my favorite quote.
That's awesome. What accomplishments are you most proud of?
What accomplishments? It's kind of the small things, to be honest. I think what I'm really proud of is like connecting with people on a really deep level and helping them figure things out, maybe improving their relationship, improving their job, that kind of stuff. I don't have anything specific off the top of my head. I am proud of how I got my first job though, with Gary Vaynerchuk. I traded him 5 Super Nintendo games.
Really?
So I'm a little bit proud of that. That was a lot of fun and kind of unique.
Yeah, no, I love hearing those specific stories. That's great. What is your biggest struggle right now?
My biggest struggle is just being consistent in terms of my online business and building that career. Like it's been pretty much all over the place. Sure. So right now it's just finding consistency in my career and my side projects. So A Boundless World and the A Boundless World podcast. So it's definitely consistency at this point.
Yeah. I mean, you know, once again, I don't know if, do you have ADHD? This I guess is personal there. You know, do you have ADHD?
ADHD on and off. I mean, I've never been diagnosed, but I feel like
it, like I find it impossible to do anything on a schedule, even small things. Which is why with this, you know, this series, I'm hoping to do it, you know, like a bunch and then release it on a schedule as opposed to
definitely batching is the way to go.
Yeah, it's the only way. It's the only way, man. What always cheers you up?
I just think talking to people and hearing what they want out of life, hearing what they're struggling with, just shooting the shit, so to speak, excuse my language, but just understanding people. And I like hearing people about people's struggles in a way because it makes them more human. I
Yeah.
feel a lot of us, again, there's like the whole social media effect, like life is only good, life is only good. But like, if you got to know everyone on a really deep level, you know that everyone's battling some pretty messed up demons and struggles in their lives.
No, absolutely. Which is why I had to ask that question. That's actually one of like Humans of New York's questions.
Yeah.
He asked that, and he asks like, do you have one piece of advice? I think.
Yeah.
There's seriously a phone in here? I didn't even.
I thought we turned those off.
I'm just gonna. That's. Oh, I hit off. It didn't do anything. Let's see one more time. Eh, perfect. Yeah. And do you have any piece of random, not really random advice, but that's something I was going to ask people to think of beforehand. If it's.
Yeah, I actually asked this to my guests, and
Yeah.
to be honest, right now I'm kind of blanking, but my piece of advice would be just try a bunch of different things. I think we get a little bit too pigeonholed into one direction in our life, and don't look at like changing careers or changing jobs or changing ideas as a bad thing. Obviously, you eventually have to stick with something long enough, but I think until you get that feel, like just start trying things. You know, like don't be afraid to give it a go. Maybe you fail, maybe you succeed, but that knowledge and taking that at bat will really help you not have regrets later on in life.
Yeah, and I feel like with myself, I mean, I have a similar response to that because
yeah, you're doing a podcast, man. You're nervous as shit, but like you're trying.
Everything's going wrong. The lighting is here is horrible.
Yeah, but you're learning, right? And so this will just build and build and build, and like it's enjoyable experience all around.
Yeah, I think my one piece of advice there would be like fail. Just fail. Whatever you do.
If you don't mind, I'd love to tag on that. Like I think we're in a society like they like worship failure. Like I don't think failure is actually good in itself. Sure. But it's good to frame, right? So like everyone fails, but like I feel there's a small sublet of people who like think failure is like great. Like no, like failure happens and you should adjust, but like you shouldn't be worshiping failure to the point where you fail on purpose. Well, like yes, test and things like that.
Yeah, not. I guess I should rephrase there. I'm saying like if you're worried about doing things just a little, you know, if you're worried about kind of the inverse of doing things perfectly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. Like, I think failure is a good thing, but like there's a mentality in the kind of business and like entrepreneurial space, like failure is a good thing, but like you should try to avoid failure as much as you can but you want those lessons. Those lessons are going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's more just kind of do things. And if you're worried about failure when you're doing things, do things, fail, learn from it, and
do some more.
Yeah. So it's great to hear you counter that.
No, I think I agree with the premise, right? Sure. Like everyone fails, and I don't think failure is a bad thing, but like you should want to, like the way my mentality, I'm not trying to preach here, but like, you want to be a winner. Like no one wants to fail just to become a failure. You want to fail to become a winner. Well, you know?
Failure. You don't just fail to fail, because that is
cool. And some people do it subconsciously. Like I'm not saying everyone's out there like they try to fail, but like some people like don't really want that success. And I think like failure is just a stepping stone to success as long as you keep failing.
Yes. That's as failure. That is a fun quote that'll go on a poster tomorrow. Failure is just a stepping stone to success as long as
you keep failing. I like it.
Yeah. So what motivates you every day?
We'll get kind of deep here. I'm feeling the vibe of this this podcast. So
once again, you're comfortable.
Yeah, when I lived in China, I met this kid by the name of Marco, and he really was one of the first people to kind of accept me in Shanghai, became my best friend. But unfortunately, within the year of me being there, he died in a jet ski accident. And so that really kind of rocked my world, transformed my view on life, especially being in such a foreign land, that kind of stuff. And so that really flipped the switch for me of just like learning to add value to people's lives in any way you can. And again, that's kind of cliche here and there, but like, what motivates me is like having these conversations, giving someone an idea, supporting them to attack their idea and do this thing. Like I love mentorship calls. I love helping people. I love connecting people. So what inspires me is just like seeing people go after what they want and accomplishing it.
That's awesome. No, that's powerful, man.
And so like, yeah, I didn't want to just like name drop his passing, but like
No, yeah,
it really made me reflect on how, like, again, cliche, it's how short time
yeah,
is. And really deep here is one thing, like, I think he passed away, unfortunately, 6-7 years ago. And to this day, people still write on his Facebook wall. And so that really inspires me, because like here it was just like this funny kind of kid who sits in the back of class, but like he really had this like tremendous impact on people 6-7 years later. And so that's what really inspires me and drives me is like, Gary Vaynerchuk, my former boss, would say like he wants as many people as he can to be at his funeral. And that's kind of the philosophy I have, is like just adding value to people's lives to where like when you're gone or you're missed, you know?
yeah, and you can talk about that as long as you want. I mean, I mean, that is deep. Like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, and that's just kind of my philosophy. And yeah, I have some mix-ups here. I sometimes get greedy. I want to make the cash monies, that kind of stuff. But like my core principles in terms of building businesses and what I do is sharing my knowledge, sharing my experiences, so people A, can get more out of life, and B, not make the same mistakes I do, and really just helping them grow into the best possible version they want to be.
yeah, and I mean, that on itself is admirable. I mean, I don't know. I run a developer community, and it's got a bunch of developers, and I'm surprised how many people actually have that type of mentality. And it's just every time I find one more, it's that's something that does help my day. I mean, it's one of the things that does make my day better, because if there's yeah, these people can help 3 or 4 people, and I don't know, I guess I'm lost for words here.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Derek Sivers, not good friend. He's a blogger. I kind of just name drops him to sound cool.
Whatever.
No, but Derek Sivers, who I've met, and he is a great guy. He wrote a really good article on his blog, I think sivers.org. And basically that said, like, remember there's a person on the other side of that email. So that was also a pretty influential concept to me, because like with community management, sometimes you're like, ugh, that person again, like shit, he's so annoying. She's so annoying. But like, then you take a step back and like, that's a person on the side of their end. Like maybe their mom's sick, or maybe like they're going through a divorce, and like with these online communications, it's sometimes easy to forget that there's a human being with a beating heart, hopefully, on the other side of that exchange. And so when you frame it, yes, you're still going to have frustrations, customers upset, business deals fall through. But like when you frame it in that context, like everything you do online, every communication you have has an impact. I mean, one of the things I love about blogging so much is like I get emails from articles I wrote 5 years ago saying like, hey, that helped me leave an abusive relationship, or hey, like I quit my job because of this article. It's like that just really lights me up with like a really fluffy, beautiful,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, did you
energy.
get the I left my job because of this article?
Yeah. Sorry?
Did you actually? Sorry, people just want to get on this.
I've had people like leave relationships. Someone dropped out of school because of one of the articles I wrote, that kind of stuff.
Seriously,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Nah, it just goes to show like you sharing your experiences, being real, being vulnerable. I wrote a post on my depression, like people from my family who I hadn't even really talked to, like reached out and like, oh my goodness, I never knew you struggle with this. Me too. I was like, you're like the happiest person I know. Like, what the heck,
No,
And so like, I think just sharing the storytelling aspect really brings me back to like sharing your story in a way that adds value to people and showing that like your experience matters.
yeah. And I mean, if I can, touch on a little bit of the other side of the email as a person
Mm-hmm.
aspect. Like I was talking to someone, it was a student, and I was saying he's like, yeah, I'm in business school, and I'm in this English writing class or whatever, and I'm talking about writing emails, and I'm like my emails are never more than 3 sentences.
Yeah.
There's someone there. If you want to get through to them, you want to make them, see what, directly see exactly in like a binary thought what's going on and respond to you.
Yeah.
Like that's if you want to get through to him. And he's just like, it's like blowing his mind that like if you wrote 4 paragraphs, it's not better than 3 sentences. But like, once again, I was trying to convey something similar to what you were saying over there.
Yeah, like valuing their time. And there's a place and a time and a place for long emails in
Yeah.
certain circumstances, but it's valuing their time. And I'm really into networking and building relationships. And you'd be amazed at like the psychology behind valuing people's time and like
Yeah.
just the laziness that in terms of outreach and things like that. But like, if you really just get into the psychology of things, like it really makes a huge difference.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind me asking another one of these types of questions, in the sense of pick your poison, what is your poison?
Sweets. I eat a lot of bagels and sweet ass coffee. I'm getting a little fat, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a couple pounds myself.
Up until recently, it was smoking, but I've fortunately cut that out of my life, so that's great.
Congrats. That's
Yeah,
impressive. I don't know. It's just, yeah, I can't imagine if I started smoking, like how I would.
yeah, it's brutal, man.
Yeah. Wow. Anything else on that? If not, I can go on to another one.
No, none of that I know of.
That's awesome. Yeah. Also, freaking mac and cheese for me. I just can't.
Mac and cheese is good.
I'm like 15 years old here. If you met your adult self, if you met your adult self while you were a kid.
I'm still a child, man.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. But like, I don't know, if you were younger, like, what would you say?
Just don't be so hard on yourself. I definitely internalize a lot. Like I put a lot on my shoulders, mostly unnecessarily.
Yeah.
But just I've had a lot of failures in my life. I've had some success for sure, but definitely just like being easier on myself, being more forgiving. And I think that would parlay into a lot of my other relationships and things like that.
Yeah, I wonder if we have the same personality type here because yeah. Yeah, what do you find to be heroic these days?
Heroic cliche train here comes again, but speaking your truth. So like speaking about depression, speaking about the divorce you're going through, sharing like these stories that are usually hidden in the cobwebs behind in your mind.
Yeah, sure.
I respect people a lot who open that up. A friend of mine from college just started a blog on her like depression, like it almost killed her, and like I had no idea. And so I really appreciate those vulnerabilities because A, it's not easy. B, it's not necessarily always good. Like some people will leave you from it. Like your family might be like, you're a weirdo, like leave.
Yeah.
So like these vulnerabilities, like, yes, they're courageous, but like they have real impact, not only on the lives of people you share it with, but like it could affect your real life.
It could affect everything. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to say that. Yeah, I don't know what in my life I've done that type of thing for because you're telling the entire world. You're telling the internet, you know.
And here's the thing: most people don't care. So
yeah,
like, and the people that do are going to really care.
If you could change, I know you can totally sway from these questions if you want. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? And if you see me looking down, I'm just either taking notes or.
Yeah, I'd just be more consistent. I have a little bit of energy, then kind of sputter out. Yeah. There are a few things I've kept going, but like consistency, yeah.
Consistency. Let's see. That's a lot of these questions here. If you could master one skill you don't have right now, what would it be?
Probably copywriting.
Copywriting.
I consider myself a very good writer. Patting my own back here, but just copywriting because that enhances everything in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can connect you if you have any like copywriting kind of questions. I have my buddy who works helping people with that stuff.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Is there any time your life felt like a movie?
Pretty much every day. I mean, that question, I'm not really sure, but
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm like, I went through a lot of these questions. Is there anything you are afraid of, like phobias or?
So last night I actually told my girlfriend I'm afraid of like white noise.
Oh yeah,
it really freaks me out for some reason. Like I just feel like ghost paranoid. So last night it was funny. I sat down to meditate with this awesome app called Calm.
In
my phone, and so I plugged in my earphones. I'm laying down, and somehow I'd love to know if you've heard of this or whatever.
Sure.
I plug it in, and I hear white noise, and then like almost like a radio frequency of people around me, like through my iPhone, through my headphones, and like girls' voices in the background. It's like to seem very, very creepy to me.
I mean, I've had that type of thing. When I was living in Washington Heights, I had my stereo system, and I was freaked out at first because like some night I just hear people talking, right? Yeah. I just hear people talking, and my stereo system wasn't plugged into anything.
It's bizarre.
But then at one point, it wasn't people talking; it was the Hispanic music. The neighborhood. I'm like, oh, it's just picking up radio.
Yeah, I just picked up, but I never put it in, like, just earphones in my iPhone, and then I restarted my iPhone and it was fine. But I also hate snakes. And what else do I hate?
I know.
Yes, white
You're
noise.
testing out a lot of these questions, so thank you for like, being a sport about that. What is something you'd say people take for granted?
What do people? Their family, friends, health. I think a lot of us take a lot of shit for granted.
Um, yeah, no, it's one of those things where I bet I totally take it for granted, but when one of them just goes away or something or just like leaves, I'm like, wait, no, no, you come right back here. No, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, we all live really good lives, all things considered. And like, again, I could get on a rant here. It's like everyone's like, oh, like you should be happy. Like there's starving kids in Africa, and like for me, that doesn't really resonate with me, because like everything's subjective, right? Like
Yeah.
even if you're living a good life, excuse me, you're still gonna have your struggles, just being human, you know. So I don't think we should trivialize. Like obviously there are extremes and things like that, but like it really frustrates me when people trivialize like, oh, just because you grew up wealthy, like you should have no like that kind of thinking bothers me, because like we all have our own vices within our own world.
Yeah, and I love seeing like the people who have a ton of money, and then they have all these kind of. I mean, when I interact with them, a lot of time they end up having these the same normal everyday issues that people have. I'm not saying like, oh, it's if you have more money, you have more money, more problems, right? I'm saying like they these people end up having issues that you don't really think about day to day.
Yeah, it's all you subjective to your own reality, right? Like it's fascinating to me. And I mean, the guy who sold Minecraft is depressed. Like,
Yeah, that's one of the main ones. Like I've met someone who just doesn't know what to do from his day to day.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple more like small questions here, and if you have anything that you want to talk about, we can go with that.
Yeah, of course. I'm okay with the questions.
Yeah, and because the stories are really, I guess, the meat here that from what I've been seeing. Is there any fad? These are just from the first list of just more goofy, I guess. What is there any fad that you hate, or is there a fad that you wish came back?
I'm not really big on fads, to be honest. Selfie stick, go like throw that off a cliff.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, other than that, I don't really have a good answer for that, unfortunately.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely selfie stick for me as well. But trying to think my side. I don't know. I'll point one out.
Oh, like auto DMs. I hate that. That's not really a fad, but like if you use Twitter, people auto DMing you, like direct messaging you. It's like, no.
Auto do it?
Yeah, like they send you follow them and it's like, hey, check out my website. It's like, no, I don't like that.
No. Yeah, that's really.
It's like it's a small Twitter critique.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'd have to think about it to find my real answer. What is one of the weirdest things you used to do as a teenager?
As a teenager, as a 10, 11, I used to bite my toenails, which is pretty gross.
Yeah, me too.
That's about it.
I've got only like one more question here that seems relevant. Have you met anyone famous? Is there a story that stands out from that?
Have I met anyone famous? I've met a few professional baseball players, but I think the one that really stands out is I somewhat met Snoop Dogg at the airport.
Seriously?
He was flying Southwest. And so he was at like a coffee shop kind of in the corner. His like bodyguard, like 7 foot, 500 pounds. And there's a small group of people. He's flying Southwest, so he must have been having some money issues if you're flying Southwest.
Yeah, but he's Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, so he was Snoop Dogg back then. He was not yet Snoop Lion. So there's a few people in line like waiting to get autographs. And so I get in line, maybe 4 people in front of me. And this very attractive, physically blessed individual was in front of me. And so she goes up. He like signs her autograph, whatever. And then I get up. He's like, no more autographs. They like push me away. I was like, come on. I was like, Snoop, you just get. He's like, do I even need to say why?
Did he actually?
Yeah. Well, he actually. So he said like, look, whatever. So, but what had happened is he did an AMA on Reddit, and I commented. I was like, hey, Snoop Dogg, like, why did you sign that attractive girl's whatever and not me? And he's like, do I need to answer that question?
Oh,
like, apparently he remembered it.
He actually remembered it. Wow.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was kind of a bizarre experience, but yeah, like I met Snoop Dogg.
That's awesome. Oh man. I actually, I don't know. I think I came up with that question and I put on the list and I was like, I'm gonna find something. Like everyone's gonna have an awesome story from that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good question.
thank you. Yeah, if you have any questions, suggestions too, like, but yeah, I mean, we're running down on the time, and I just want to see if you have anything that comes to mind that you want to say here. I'm just, with these interviews, it's very experimental. I'm trying to really just paint portraits of random people, and
Yeah, I dig it. I think you did a pretty comprehensive review. Again, just coming back to that taking chances and not being so hard on yourself.
yeah. Well, I guess any last words? Not. I'll just
This too shall
this
pass.
shows pass. Awesome. Well, thank you, Bud Hennekes, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes. Thank you for, taking your time and joining us today.
It was my pleasure, Pocket.